right? All right. Mark Farzetta is going to join us at 4:30. Our good friend now, Zander Krause, the co-host of Birds 365, joins us now. We appreciate it. That was a great conversation you had this morning, brother.
Which one?
With your guest.
The first guest?
The guy was talking about the analytics of
the analytics. Yeah, it was good. I mean, look, I try not to – I do understand the sentiment of, like, this is football. It's not math, and that's where I think sometimes the analytics goes a little bit over the top, where it's like, sorry, I'm not projecting the Eagles are going to win 8 games next year because numbers. I'm looking at the talent. I'm looking at the football team. This is a game. It's a man's game. It's a physical game. There's a lot more that goes into it. But doesn't mean I don't think there's good room for the context and for the information. I thought it was pretty good, though. Yeah.
To extend what you're saying, always remember there's 31 other teams, too, that have to get through the war of attrition.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you never know. Look at the Jets season, what happened to it last year. 4 minutes into the year, their season was over.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know, especially when we're talking with the injuries. All right. Zander, how much do you think the defense is going to hurt the offense this year, especially early?
How much is what? The defense going to hurt the offense?
Yeah.
I don't think too much. I think Vic will be better at weathering the storm a little bit more so than they were last year to switch it up in certain moments when needed. They definitely got to get off the field. I mean, they definitely have to do their part, though. Last year, they didn't do their part. You heard the analytics guy, talking about how bad the defense was in DVOA, which was that advanced analytical stat that he was using. That guy was the creator of that stat, so maybe he's a little bit biased toward it. It is a good metric, though, and it did show that the defense last year was a lot worse than the offense compared to how much they dropped from 2022, which was interesting. But look, defense has to do their job. They got to play. They're all going to have to play well. I mean, I know there's a lot of projection on that, but if we want to go far, we need them all to step up. And, like I said, we've talked about it. They got to get going in December. They got to get going late November. We don't need them to come out of the gate as the best defense in the league, but they have to look competent. They have to find their footing. They have to communicate, and they have to, really get in rhythm by the time we get late in the year.
You think Vic has fixed the Eagles' defensive issues from 23?
No.
See, to me, is going to come down to Howie.
Well, look, Howie
if the right players are in the right place, because Vic's going to give you a competent scheme, Zander. It's going to be a competent scheme, and your guy even said it. Fangio is known. It's an 18-month fix. It's not just an overnight fix. This is not going to look like gangrene.
Well, yeah, and they also didn't address it the same way they addressed their offense in terms of Saquon and A.J. Brown. Now, really, I mean, the offense they had more time, but you sign a free agent like A.J. Brown. It catapults your offense. They invested a lot of draft picks. So you got to give them a little bit more time than if you went out and you traded for Brian Burns and you went out and signed a L'Jarius Sneed. Oh, it's a different conversation. So the defense is a little bit more behind. But look, I think Howie has invested the assets. He got the draft picks. There was reasoning and logic to every pick he made. Now, it might not pan out, but there's not like he made a Jalen Reagor pick where you're like, why the hell did you overthink that? So if let's see if they pan out. I think he's done his job. Now it's going to be on the coaches to get it out of them. But my concern is that none of them are game ready yet. None of them are proven players. So it's definitely going to take a second for sure.
I went back and I kind of changed up because I kind of broached this a little bit about a week or 2 weeks ago when we were looking at that 23 roster and I was looking at the 24 roster. Compare this roster going into right now, in your opinion, going into training camp versus that roster going into training camp in 22. You think you got a better ball team now than you did then?
I think you have a better offense. I don't think you have a better defense. And the only reason the offense is better is because I think most of them are more mature. You're a couple years further down the line for guys who are, slightly before their prime. I think A.J. Brown's a better player now. I think Devontae Smith's a better player now. Jalen Hurts should be a better player now. Haven't seen it, but based on the progression of his career, you would expect him to make some sort of a bounce back here where he's gotten better. The offensive line, Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata, they've gotten better. Now you've gotten significantly worse in the middle of your O-line with the right guard and the center position.
And older at right tackle.
Older at right tackle, better at running back, maybe a little worse at tight end. You could argue Dallas Goedert was probably a better player a couple years ago than he will be this year, but I don't think he's out of his prime.
Nope.
So maybe he could be the same guy. Offensively, I think you're right there. I think you're comparable with the team that took you to the Super Bowl. Defensively, I think is a different scenario. You had TJ Edwards and Kaiser White both played better than they were supposed to play, which was a big crutch for our defense that year. Fletcher Cox was putting up big numbers. Now, you didn't have Jalen Carter at the time, but you were getting a lot of production out of that defensive front. You had Javon Hargrave, who was a big loss. Now both those DTs are gone. You had Hassan Reddick, who was obviously ripping the league that year. That was probably his best year as a pro in 22, career year. BJ was 2 years younger. Yeah, I would say defense is a little bit worse. I mean, Darius Slay was 2 years younger. James Bradbury played like a Pro Bowl player. CJ Gardner-Johnson, I think he was there, right? Yeah, he was there that year.
Yeah, he had six. He had led the NFL.
Right. And he came back for the playoffs. He got hurt at the end of the year, but he was back for the Super Bowl. So I think your defense got worse, and that's going to be the big question mark going into the year.
You had 281 tackles between White and with Edwards that 22 year. That has not been even addressed or hasn't been even dealt with in the last 2 years. So clearly, in my opinion, you had more of a balanced team in 22 than you did in 24 going in. Is that fair to say? There's more balance.
Yeah, there's more balance, but that's not everything you need is balance. So, but look, it'll be interesting. The one thing I will say about this defense compared to 22, I think there's more upside. That doesn't mean they're going to realize that upside or ever get to that upside, but I do think it exists. I think they have better, younger players, more talent across the roster. Whether they pan out is up to each individual player and the coaches that are coaching them. But, you didn't have Sills back then. We didn't have young guys that you could look at like this. Even the defensive tackles. Javon Hargrave was 28, 29 years old. You knew he was going to be gone soon. Fletcher Cox is on the other side of 30. Now you have Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, who are both sub 25 and could be, perennial Pro Bowl type of players. So we're going to see. I think there's more upside on the defense this year.
And Zander, everything you're saying is right, but I hate that because just like Nick Casario's talking to him the other night, expectations don't win games.
Yeah.
If you've got all these expectations or all these projections, that doesn't win you ball games.
Yeah, but
guys that you're more comfortable and confident in that can do their job is how you win ball games. When you look like you said, Quinyon Mitchell, Nolan Smith, Devin White, Nakobe Dean, Bryce Huff, Reed Blankenship, will Gardner-Johnson be healthy? Is Slay too old? Avante Maddox, will he be healthy? These are all
but still fixing that problem.
These are all expectations.
Fixing that problem, though, because I agree with what you're saying, but that's part of the complexity of building a winning team in the NFL. You can't expedite draft picks.
But they do this there's too much turnover every year to be stability-wise and continuity on your defense.
Sills, we were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. That was an older
and you know what? In 17, you were in the Super Bowl, and 3 years later, you had a 4-win team.
Yeah, but the defense right now isn't fixed with Band-Aids. It's fixed with long-term potential players that Howie spent draft capital on. That's my point. I agree with you. There's a waiting game. I agree with you. Hope is not a strategy. I agree with you. Expectations don't win you ball games. But when you draft players, there's time. It takes time. That's part of juggling free agents and draft picks and, trades and all those things. Howie's been pretty good at it. He's been better at it on offense than he has been on defense. But you got to give him some time. Look, the defense, I think, looks good for losing a majority of that 2022 defense. I think we're in a pretty decent spot to turn it around. You're right. It's not turned around yet, but that's because it's going to take time, man. I think it's going to take time.
Here again, Jeff Kerr said it on your show. You can't, and the Eagles will never have wide open windows for Super Bowls because it's not sustainable on how they build their defense in some of these 1-year contracts. That's Jeff Kerr saying that. He said that on your
Well,
program, that he doesn't believe that you're going to be year in and year out a Super Bowl contending team. Because to me, the 22 team has far better balance. And I do think you have to have you don't have to be the best defense in the league, but you can't be the worst and have the best. You can't be 31st in defense and 8th in offense. If you're 15th in defense or 11th in defense and you're 4th in offense, you can win a Super Bowl with that.
yeah, I understand, but isn't, in a way, isn't how they've addressed the defense addressing that problem?
With you, yes.
They did, outside of the linebacker position. Jalen Carter's under contract for the next 4 years. Jordan Davis is under contract for the next 3 years at least. You have 3 young linebacker or cornerbacks who are at the back end of your roster. CJ Gardner-Johnson, 3-year deal. Reed Blankenship here for another 2 years. Bryce Huff, 3 years. I mean, Nolan Smith here for another 3 years. I'm just saying, they're not all proven. I understand that. But they are going to now have that opportunity. It was a little bit of a turnover on defense. It was. That's what's happened in the last couple years, and it's a couple years behind the offense. The offense really started turning, remember, when they drafted Jalen Hurts, and then they drafted Devontae Smith, and then they traded for A.J. Brown. The offensive line has been good, but there's also been some turnover there that's worked out. Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata stepped up. He won the job from Andre Dillard not that long ago. It seems like an eternity ago, but it wasn't that long
Hard
ago.
to believe he did that.
Hard to believe.
He was
Exactly.
battling him.
So, look, you got to give that's what you could argue. See, Bob Brown, right on point, as always.
Always again.
But look, this is exactly what I'm thinking, and it's my fear as we enter the year. Not that we're going to suck, not that we're going to not live up to expectations, but that 2024 is going to be more about growing pains on defense than it is about being a competent defense. That's why I've said it on shows, and people are like, don't go there yet. 2025, the Eagles look like they're going to be phenomenal.
I completely agree with that.
Obviously, we can't skip ahead. I'm not going to dismiss the 24 season, but when you point out some of the guys that are under contract, and if they continue to develop and improve the way they have so far, and you obviously hope you have that with the youngsters at corner
and the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, 2025 looks like it's going to be the year. But look, I hope it doesn't mean I think I'm writing off 24. I'm not writing it off. I'm just saying you are right. When you lay out the problems with the defense, you're correct. But it's not, I wouldn't say they've done it fundamentally wrong. You could argue at the linebacker position they have because they continue to put Band-Aids on it. Now with Devin White. Now, they did invest a 3rd-round pick. It wasn't the right pick, it appears, so far. I mean, let's see if Nakobe can do anything.
I don't mind you taking swings, though.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, but you don't want to become the team that you'll rely on free agents every single year because those are the teams that suck the most.
That's right.
So I don't have a problem with the way they fundamentally rebuilt this defense so far.
What do you make of these numbers here? This goes into what we kind of talked about a little bit yesterday with Jalen Hurts. I went back and did some homework on it. In 2021, Jalen Hurts had a 5.7 yards per carry average when he ran the football. Every time he touched the ball, he's almost getting 6 yards a carry.
Yeah, it's tremendous.
And 22, when he had that year where he only had 6 picks, he had 23 touchdowns, 3,700 yards, almost 800 yards rushing. He ran the ball for 4.9 yards, 5 yards a carry. Do you understand? Every time you touch the ball twice, you're getting first downs. That's undefendable.
Yeah, no, I get it.
2023, that number went to 3.4. So this is a trend in how they're coaching him. They're getting him away. They went from 5.7 to basically 4.7 to 3.4. They're consistently bringing him down in them RPOs and
I don't know if it was them last year, man. You saw a lot of times Jalen Hurts like. Well,
this is 3 years in a row. These numbers have gone down. I mean, there's a reason,
right? But my point is, you've seen Jalen Hurts take some of those stuff into his own hands too. Last year, you never saw him in 22 kneel behind the line of scrimmage ever, because he always thought he had a fighting chance no matter who was trying to tackle him, to get an extra yard, to get the extra move, to make that one extra cut. Last year, he was going down. Look, I don't have a problem with it, but that's the reality of what happened. And you had a point that you said earlier before I was on the show that I want to bring back up, and you said, would you ever put Tom Brady in an RPO scheme? And I was thinking about that, and I'm like, well, you obviously wouldn't. But what's the difference? The difference is that every quarterback who plays in the NFL has to have passing ability.
Correct.
Not every quarterback who plays in the NFL has to have running ability. So my point is, Tom Brady would never have to do the RPO because he can win with his style.
Well, then you're
Jalen
agreeing with
Hurts,
me that Hurts is just not a good passer.
he's not good enough yet. If they're going to remove the run game,
Right.
which we don't know if they're going to, but to your point, that's the direction it seems to be going.
Yep.
If they're going to remove that, the only way for us to win or for Jalen Hurts to be an MVP caliber quarterback is to be better at what Brady did. It's not the inverse. Brady never had to do what Jalen had to do. Just like Patrick Mahomes.
That's a longer putt in development then. Be prepared.
I'm aware of that. I think, look.
There's more turnovers too. There's more turnovers to come.
Yeah, but Jalen wasn't a bad passer. When he passed the ball in 22, he wasn't bad. He just did it less because he ran more.
But there were less explosion plays because you know why?
Well,
he was explosion when he was averaging almost 6 yards a carry. Dude, when you got a quarterback and I'm a linebacker and I know that guy's getting 5.5 yards a carry, I'm not leaving my post and cheating back there because that guy takes off. That's on my ass and why he picked that up. If Jalen Hurts is not going to take off and they're not running him, I'm going to cheat, get back in my drops. That's why the middle of the field was all blocked off after Goddard got hurt. They had nowhere else to go. They turned him into a limited guy. And once again, like Greg Cosell says, this is not what this kid does well. What that kid does well is with his feet first and his legs second. When you got a guy running the ball 6 yards of carry, Zander, that opens up passing lanes because you know why? Those backers can't drop deep enough to get those guys coming across the middle and them slants.
They're worried about you taking the 6 yards.
They're worried about you taking off like you just said. Absolutely. But when you got me sitting back there and you're coaching me like Carson Wentz, tap, 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 blitz, sack, bro, you're kind of slowing the process. You're trying to skip levels of development for the guy. It just, I don't know, man. You said something too. Kellen Moore, the only difference in between Kellen Moore and Brian Johnson is this. You have 5 more years of play calling. Now, is that a lot? Yeah, it totally is. Plus, he played the position at a high level. No doubt about it. I get it. However, if that's going to change that guy into being what they want him to be in a pocket, I think you got another year. Like you said, 25 is where he's going to be. If you keep that coordinator intact, that's where you're going to see the best Jalen Hurts is next year. You're going to see a bumpy ride, man. And I agree with your guy that was on also above Barkley. Barkley moving the needle, I don't know. You lost Kelsey and Sayamalo in the last 2 years. You got a lesser O-line and an older right tackle. You're not the same. You don't have the same O-line you did when Sanders was in the building, Zander. So he's coming to a lesser line than what Sanders had. To some extent, even to what DeAndre Swift had. An older lane, inexperienced Steen, and a guy who we think I said he's going to be a Pro Bowler. But you lose Kelsey, Sayamalo, and Lane's older, and you got to rely on Goddard being healthy. What if he's not out there? The whole right side of your offense is not the same as 22. I see dual threat. Thank you, brother.
Dual threat. Niners, you got to use the new emoji, man. You're a member on the channel. You got to use the new emoji. I added some emojis. Big Sills, I don't know if you know this, so you're like a technical dummy. But the people in the chat, they can now put a little emoji. It's got Big Sills' head in there. So they can put a little emoji of Big Sills' head in the chat. So you guys got to do that if you're a member, man. I'm trying to add more emojis for our members.
More flavor to the thing. Is that what you're trying to do?
There's even one that says dual threat.
I like that. I loved your conversation. It's funny because the guy was, you know what's funny, Zander? He was looking at all the things that I've been looking at. And when you come to it, what really sucks is this. You're trying to tell fans this. Hey, look, do you have a good team? Yes. Do you have a team that if things fall right, can be in the right position because the NFC is not what you think it is? Absolutely. Do you think the NFC's down, Seals? I do. Do you look at it where the Eagles could catch lightning in a bottle and one of those cornerbacks, Cooper DeJean or Quinyon Mitchell, turn out to be great, or even Kelly Ringo or Isaiah Rodgers? Yes. Let me tell you something. I'd rather have 5 guys back there, roll the dice. I'm hoping one of those guys comes up and, they come up snake eyes on me. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm looking for that, okay? Now, again, here's this one. Here's a question for you. And before I get to Nick, so look at this, and we talked about the NFC. So in the AFC, you have Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Lamar, Stroud, Tua, Herbert. I'm not ranking them. Lawrence, Rodgers, Watson, and Wilson in Pittsburgh. I think it's harder to win the AFC than it is to win the Super Bowl. Over in the NFC,
you're not breaking any news there.
In the NFC, you got Purdy, and again, I'm not ranking. Dak, Goff, Stafford, Hurts, Mayfield, Carr, Geno, Cousins, Murray. That's the group I've got to get through versus, let me say this to you. The only people that would be ranked in the AFC quarterback rankings from the NFC would be Goff, Stafford.
Goff would be up there. What are you saying for
Goff
top 10?
Goff would be ahead of Watson.
What are you doing? Ranking them?
No, I'm just saying, if you were going to put one of the – what quarterbacks do you think would go in the top 10 in the AFC from the NFC?
Would be in the top 10 in standings over there?
Yeah.
Or just like a top 10 quarterback?
Yeah.
Well, I think Goff would. I think
Stafford?
I think Stafford probably would. I mean, it depends the context of the team and everything, but
I'm just talking about talented quarterback. Again,
well,
Mahomes,
I mean, look, I think
Burrow,
Goff is right there, top 12. I think Purdy's right there, top 12. I think Stafford's top 10. I think Jalen's right around top 10. You got 4 quarterbacks there. I think Dak Prescott's a top 10 quarterback. Could argue
I might
Dak
take Watson out and put Stafford there at 10. Dude, people are sleeping on Aaron Rodgers. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to suck.
No, Aaron Rodgers is not going to suck. I'm not sleeping on Aaron Rodgers at all.
I do not believe that guy is going to suck here. All right, I want to ask you this about Nick. If you were Nick Sirianni, what would be the one thing that you would make sure you do heading into training camp so that you didn't have, and I loved what your evaluator said, it's not so much in 23 about the 1-6 slide. It's about the entire totality of the season on how up and down and how bumpy it was. He's right. You take all 17 games. How do you go from beating, like LJ said earlier, all those high-powered teams to
I'm
losing?
surprised your meathead-ass defensive tackle is like this analytics nerd so much. I really am.
No, because he made some sense with it.
Well, he did, but I got to be honest. I was like, I approached the interview with the full openness of like, win me over with your data. And I didn't leave the interview won over by the
Then you must hate the Eagle organization because that's how your organization is run. With analytics.
No.
It's not?
No, because it is, but
Oh.
that they haven't built a team. I mean, the analytics matter in the organization. You're correct. But when I see A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata and Saquon Barkley and Darius Slay, those aren't just analytics guys, Dan. Come on, those are good football players. That's what we like as fans. We like good football players. The analytics guy kind of takes some of that out of it and is just like, well, you got this many yards per play on this time and blah, blah, blah. You're going to be 8 wins. And I'm like, no, not at all.
You like good football players putting big numbers up. You like wins too.
That's
right?
not what I said. Don't put words in my mouth.
Don't freaking cry to me like that, man. So what would you do if you're Nick heading into training camp?
Look, it's all
because
about.
How about this? if somebody had question marks on you going and you were walking in after your company had a down year and the stock's down, how do you walk into your company and you walk in there and you try to motivate and you tell people, hey, guess what? The sun's coming up here. Here we are. Okay, we won 11 ball games last year. We weren't very good, but still, you know how many people would die for that? What would you do if you were Nick walking into that very first team meeting when everyone's together on the 23rd?
You got to own it, like you just said. You got to own it and you got to use it. Because look, these are all professionals. This isn't college or the old days of college when they weren't paid, where you had to like relate and connect with players in order to lead them. You were making millions of dollars and they weren't. It was a different game. These are professionals. In a way, they can all relate with Nick Sirianni, who could be on the hot seat. Every one of those players is on the damn hot seat, outside of a couple of them. You know how it goes, life in the NFL. You're here one day and you're gone the next. Not for long, for a reason. I would use it. I would use it as your rally call. I wouldn't hide from it. No, people aren't dumb. These players are not dumb. They know what happened last year. They know how you're viewed in the media. They know what Dan Sileo says on the National Football Show. They know it all. So don't hide from it. Embrace it, own it, and use it to your advantage and go out there and get the team to rally around you. Put on that underdog mask if that's what you need to do, or whatever it is you guys need to do to feel fired up and feel like you're ready to go. And use it. That's what I would do. From a football perspective, it's different because he's not calling the offense and he's not as much involved. But, he's not the only guy in the NFL where that's the case. There are other coaches that don't have that. So it's not, my point is he's not an anomaly. There are other coaches that have.
I think Robert Saleh's got to go into that year up there in New York, and he's got to own that.
Yeah, and to be honest, he's got less to fall on. Nick Sirianni was successful. You can't take that from him. It's not like it was 8 years ago. Look, Doug Peterson is still using his success down in Jacksonville. That's why they listen to him. Now, he's a great coach. I'm just saying, when you have success in the league, it's a merit badge. And it should be because it's hard. Robert Saleh hasn't done shit. If I'm Nick Sirianni, I'm saying we had a down year, but we're getting back to 22. We're going to go over the top this year. And people can listen to it and believe it because he did it. It's not like he didn't do it. So I think he does have, an opportunity to get these guys to rally around him. Like I said, they're all professionals. They understand the business. They're not dumb. If you try and hide from it, I think it makes a worse environment. It makes, it's not lying, but it's not being truthful. It's omitting information that, you're just making it look worse. And I think when you have grown men in the room that are making a lot of money to play a football game, people forget this is sports, guys. This is entirely inconsequential stuff. These are guys throwing balls around the field. In a way, you have to, create that sense of urgency that might not be there after coming off that type of year. And I think he has the chance to do it. I really do.
I want to get one last comment out of you here with, I don't see the Eagles ever in a million years doing hard knocks. I would never think that Howie would ever be in a position where he would ever, neither organization would never unzip their fly like the Giants have. I watched that thing with Brian Dable and with Joe Schoen again last night, and the absolute scene that they made, and he made, because the reason they didn't bring Tyrod Taylor back is because the guy bitched and said, hey, well, that's great. Now we have the same quarterback room coming back. And the day before, they were making a bitch about how they wanted to get Jaden Daniels so bad. It made it, honestly, dude, if you're going into training camp and you're Daniel Jones, you know that organization is not 100% behind you. Yeah. I can't believe John Mara is sitting there going, I didn't want Barkley to go. I didn't want Barkley to go. You let him go. Okay. Now I get to see him twice a year. And then you're watching these two guys run the organization live on TV, making an asshole of John Mara, giving a guy $150 million because the two guys that gave it to him hate him now. I cannot believe what I'm watching. It's the worst hard knocks I've ever seen for a team.
Yeah, look, it's also tough though, because these guys' job is different than it's different than how most people would view it. Like, I don't think Joe Schoen has looked as bad as people have made him out to be. Like, he was like Everybody's giving him shit because the guy said we can't sign a $12 million running back. They suck. No smart GM in their right mind is going to sign a running back before they have an offensive line worth of shit. It's just like the Eagles signed Saquon Barkley because everything was built on the team, on the offense. So in a way, it's like it's tough.
You think it's smart throwing shade on the guy that you have to rely on to try to win?
I didn't say that. I'm just saying when you have script writers, when you have directors and you have producers cutting and editing content, it's very easy to create captivating storylines. It's tough business. Like, you think it would look good on Howie Roseman if the cameras were rolling when he was talking about Hassan Reddick?
No,
it wouldn't. Take that and apply it to all 31 other teams in the NFL. It's an ugly business. There's going to be conversations that GMs have to have that fans will not like, that other players will not like.
So you think Howie and Jeffrey were talking shit on Jalen Hurts in the offseason, like they were talking shit on?
I'm sure they've had a conversation. Wait. Okay, so are you going to say to me that you don't think our GM and our owner had one conversation about the quarterback after what they saw last year?
I think they've had a bunch of them.
Exactly. So
like
if they're on, and not everybody would like everything that was said, I'm sure. So when you take that and you put it on film, it's tough. I mean, it's
how in do you think they are on Hurts?
Well, I think they're in because I think financially.
No. I'm talking about just again. I get the money. You're tied to him for 3. I'm talking about how do you think they look at him right now? You think they lost a little confidence in him last year?
I think Jeffrey Lurie is more sold on Jalen Hurts than Howie Roseman is.
Huh. Interesting.
I think Jalen Hurts is a Jeffrey Lurie baby. I think he loves Jalen Hurts. I think he loves what he represents. I think he loves turning a guy in the second round and the whole story of a guy who was sat in college and, elevating him to a premier quarterback in the league and paying him the money. I think Jeffrey Lurie loves that element. From a GM's perspective, I think Howie has to wonder. I mean, look, you got all these players and you're watching a guy like Brock Purdy, torch the league because he's just a different style of a quarterback. I don't believe Brock Purdy's a better player than Jalen Hurts. And to be honest, I don't think you do either. And I don't think anybody does. But his style of quarterbacking is effective when you have that type of talent around them. It would only be natural for Howie to think, damn, what if I had a guy in the sixth round who could get rid of the ball quick, come in here? What if Kenny
spread it around better?
Exactly. That's not Jalen's play, which is fine. But that's my point where I think Lurie's 100% on Jalen. I think he loves it and he wants to win with Jalen. I think Howie is probably 90% there, where 10% of the time you're dreaming, but it's just daydreams. It ain't happening.
Yeah, you got to always like Zander here because Joe Schoen said that he can win playoff games with Devin Singletary the same way he can win playoff games with Saquon Barkley.
What did Saquon Barkley do for the Giants in the last 5 years?
No. That's his point. He thinks Devin Singletary is just as good as Saquon Barkley.
That's not what he said.
That's exactly what he said. He thinks I can win a playoff game.
Am I here protecting?
I can win a playoff game
defending the Giants GM? Sills. Devin Singletary for $1 million is worth more to an organization that sucks out loud than a $12 million running back is when you're trying to build a winning football team. That's not controversial to say or think.
You have a $10 million running back sitting in your huddle right now, and you think that's value.
I didn't say that.
Okay. Do you think it's value?
I think when you're the Giants and you suck.
No. You have a $10 million running back in the Eagle huddle right now. Do you think that's value?
Well, what would you rather have? I'll ask you and I'll ask everybody in the chat.
Well, the last 2 years you had 2 guys, $1.5 million.
Right,
Your point on Devin Singletary gained 1,300 and 1,200.
Let me finish. Would you rather have Saquon Barkley, who's a luxury on offense? The only reason you signed Saquon Barkley is because your offensive line is built, your wide receivers are stacked, you have a tight end, and you have a quarterback. Now, would you rather have Saquon Barkley or a star middle linebacker?
Well, I'd rather have Patrick Queen.
Me too. But they didn't go that route.
But if you're telling me Sills, would you rather have a player that could give you the same numbers that Miles Sanders did in 22 or Saquon Barkley? I'll go like this. Well, cost efficient, like Zander said, $1.5 million for 1,300 yards. Because if I have to pay $10 million for 1,300 yards and 400 yards receiving, $10 million, that ain't quite cost effective.
It's not cost effective for anybody, but the Eagles' offense was so
That's
good.
what you just said. The Giants. Well, what is it cost effective in Philly then to spend?
No, I never said it was, but they had a luxury to be able to do it because their offense is already built. The Giants' offense sucks. Also, let me dispute our man Bob Brown for a second. He says, Zander, Howie's career is tied to Jalen. Lurie's is not. Bob, I don't think so. Jalen Hurts, if he fails in Philadelphia, I can almost guarantee you Howie Roseman will not be let go. Howie Roseman.
That'll be the second quarterback you gave excess of $38 million and north of that to, who bombed out on you.
Okay. Howie's gonna fall on the sword, but how are you so sure that Lurie wasn't the one who went and said, that's the guy I'm paying as our quarterback, Howie, get the deal done?
Oh, no, he's got to go. He's got to give the Pope's.
I'm not saying Howie wouldn't have given it to Jalen. I think Howie probably would have too. I don't think he would have given it to him that early. But I think Howie's career is a lot less tied to Jalen Hurts than you think.
What do you – okay, one last one here then. What gets Howie Roseman fired?
At this point, Dan, I don't – the only thing I see in the future that could get Howie Roseman fired would be if Jeffrey Lurie gives the team to his son and his son doesn't like Howie. That's it.
So if they don't win a Super Bowl when they spent $200 almost $1 million in offense and you don't deliver the goods,
yeah,
but you spend all this money and all the draft equity, and in the next 5 or 6 years, you don't deliver one, and you always remember you revert back to Doug and all that great coaching staff. And ever since that time, you did get to the 22 game, no question about it. But if you don't deliver a Super Bowl in the next, counting from 22 up, in the next 5 years, so it would be a total of 7, you think he keeps his job?
If he doesn't win a Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Wow.
I think Fly Parks is correct. If you have losing seasons, multiple in a row, then Howie's we gone. But here's the thing.
Well, they're not going to do that because I don't see them that kind of team.
And that's why Howie will be retained, because Howie does so much right, even for a guy that like you that's a little bit critical. He does so much right, managing the cap, getting players, remaining relevant, doing all the little things that if somebody doesn't work out, he's going to give Howie the leash to move on. Just like he did with Carson Wentz. How many head coaches has Howie been with? He was here with Andy at the end of Andy.
He was at the end of
Andy.
Andy.
Then he gave it to Chip. Then Doug came back. Then Doug got fired. Then Nick came back. If Nick got fired last year, they weren't going to fire Howie.
No. You get this. And he's weathered because the owner likes him and likes his whatever, because let me tell you, them putting him still in the organization and him going with R.C. Slocum on that European vacation that he went on while Chip was running the team, and for him to keep him employed, he must have understood that there's talent there, because you know what he is? There's no reason. The reason that Howie Roseman has the job, Zander, is not because of anything he does football-wise. It's because of the things that he does. I'm going to tell you what it is. Dude, he's nothing special in picking players. What he is he's really great at manipulating the cap, contract negotiations. He's also great at salary cap, and he's great at that. That is what his
That's
forte
not the only
is.
thing he's
He
great at.
doesn't come from a personnel background.
I'm not saying he does, but you're being disingenuous.
You got Jeff Stoutland in the room. How much do you really think he has input on a guy from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, that's a guard?
You're being disingenuous to say that he's only.
I'm not. I don't believe he's a good evaluator talent.
Damn, look at our offense.
Okay, let's look at it. You traded because you fucked up on Ray.
Yeah, whether they traded or drafted.
You traded for AJ Brown. I'm talking about.
No, you're wrong.
AJ Brown.
If you let me speak, I'll tell you why you're wrong.
AJ Brown is a cover of a failure.
It doesn't matter because he got the cover. The guy
No,
is
he
produced.
didn't. You lost $65 million in equity of rookie contracts that you could have built your defense with, spending on the guy you spent 25 a year on.
Big Sills. Every GM in the NFL makes mistakes. If you view it from a lens that you should be shooting 100% from the field, yes, Howie's made a ton of mistakes and a ton of bad decisions, like that one that you can say. But when you put everything together and you look at the entire body of work, and look, Howie cannot play the football games. Howie signs the contracts. You have A.J. Brown, you have Devontae Smith, you have a top 5 offensive line for the last 6 years. Your quarterback's under contract. Your tight end. You're building out the defense. He has
Who's
done
the best player he's drafted?
probably Jalen Carter. A few years
Jalen
ago.
Carter.
Probably.
Okay. Jalen Carter. And I agree with you. I think this guy has tremendous upside. But the other guys, Stoutland is in the building there. That's his call on what
His
he
job
does.
is not defined only
You've
on
had
draft
Howard
picks.
Mudd and Jeff Stoutland.
Dan, his success is not defined on draft picks. That is one part of the puzzle.
That's why I said he's a cap guy. He ain't a talent guy.
Okay, so are you going to tell me that? Great job signing everybody, but
Name me one corner he has drafted that was great.
But the talent on the field is amazing, Dan.
Name me one corner he's drafted that's been great.
Man, you're picking and choosing.
No, name me one linebacker he's drafted that's been great.
You're picking and choosing. If you look
I
at
can seemingly pick a lot.
Okay, and you can pick a lot of good too, is my point.
Where?
What do you, Dan, are you telling me we have a Panthers offense, a Panthers roster?
No, I'm telling
Our
you.
roster is stacked head to toe.
Jalen Hurts was never designed to be the starter in this place. They landed on him like Kyle Shanahan landed on Brock Purdy in the last pick of the draft. Holy shit, the guy's good. Okay? Can't believe it. Wow, we got like Brady landing on Brady in the 6th round. You think that was really great talent evaluating by the Patriots? Or do you think they missed on him 5 times too? They passed on Tom Brady 5 times.
Okay.
They landed on him because he was the next player available.
Listen, you're in delusion land where you believe Howie Roseman
No, you think that guy knows what he's doing in drafting.
I
think he's
say that.
terrible at
We're
it.
talking about if he's going to get fired. Howie Roseman does enough to have a good roster on the field, to manage the money, which is the most important part for Jeffrey Lurie. He manages the money, and he puts out a good team that has won the NFC East more times than any other team in the NFC East in the last 25 years.
Let me show you this too, folks.
Facts.
Hassan Reddick was signed because of the failure of the Derek Barnetts of the world.
Okay, would you rather just sit here and say, okay, I failed on Derek Barnett. Let me sit here and cry.
Wait, let's fail on Barnett, fail on Rager, fail on Dillard, fail on every linebacker like Dean or
you're
Corner.
Dan, you're cherry picking the stuff.
Cherry picking? Name me a position that he's drafted. Name me a position outside of Jeff Stoutland where you went, that guy's great. Jalen Carter, okay.
Okay, great. So let me just put it all in a vacuum. The only thing that matters that Howie Roseman does is take selections in the 1st round of the NFL draft. Who said that? That's not how he's being evaluated. So you're cherry picking that he missed on this draft pick, so he should get fired. That's not how Jeffrey Lurie
I said he's not a talent guy.
Okay, but there's a talented roster on the field. Yes or no?
Talented offense.
Okay. And that's how he's being evaluated. There's talent on the roster. They're under contract. The cap is managed properly. He has done things right, especially for a guy like Jeffrey Lurie, who doesn't give a shit about a missed draft pick here and there.
Here and there? You haven't drafted a corner in 25 years. That's decent outside of Lito Shepherd. I mean, a linebacker, the last linebacker you drafted was what? Trent Cole? I mean, we're talking about massive not performing selections. And when you have Howard Mudd and you have Jeff Stoutland, again, we'll agree to disagree on this. I think his forte.
No, because I want to run through it with you now, because now you've gone too far even on the draft picks. Let's just go back to last year. Jalen Carter, is he an impact on the team? Yes.
Yes.
Nolan Smith, jury's still out. I'll give you that one. Tyler Steen, a projected starter this year coming into the season. Sidney Brown was an impact player late in the year last year.
I don't know if
Ringo,
Steen's
a
good.
projected starter on this team right now, or at least an impact cornerback at the back of the roster. Moro Ajomo is going to be your third or fourth defensive tackle, and he's a 7th rounder. Tanner McKee is your 3rd string quarterback. That's just last year's draft.
And your last year's draft produced the 31st ranked defense.
Yeah, but they haven't had time to develop. What do you? The 2022 draft is all of a sudden going to make us the best?
Kansas City
in the
seemingly
NFL?
does.
I'm talking about drafting players that have an impact on our team. You're saying he doesn't draft right ever. It's wrong. Look at 23, Jalen Carter. Look at 22, Jordan Davis and Cam Jurgens. Look at 21, Devontae Smith, Landon Dickerson, Milton Williams, Kenneth Gainwell.
Than I do.
Man, you're not looking.
You're thinking more. You think more of Jordan Davis than I do.
No, I don't. I'm saying he drafted a player that is contributing to the football team. You're acting like every draft pick he takes is a catastrophic failure. It's wrong. It's not true.
There's a reason why you don't have anybody on that side of the ball that now with any kind of experience. And what was the thing my friend said? You don't win ball games with expectations. You got a ton of expectations on defense, and you're hoping. Hope's not a strategy.
They defense in the last couple of years, and they drafted a shit ton of players. It
We'll
takes
find
time
out
for them to pan out.
We shall find out if it pans out.
I think you're not looking at. I would encourage you to go and look at the last 5 drafts. You're right, how we used to suck at drafting. We have a lot of players on this football team that Howie Roseman has drafted that have been big impacts.
Okay, take Jalen Carter off. Name me one defensive impact player that he's drafted in the last 3 years.
Milton Williams.
Okay, Milton Williams.
3rd round player. You only
last
have
3 years. Last 3 years. You said 3 years. Last 3 years, Milton Williams. Who else?
We'll see if Nakobe Dean, he's going to be the starter. I don't believe in him, but you're right. I mean, I would give you him. Sidney Brown. I mean, Jalen Carter hasn't fully lived up to it yet, but he's going to be that guy. Nolan Smith. We'll see if he pans out. Keely Ringo was a 4th round player. I mean, look, these aren't all 1st round draft picks. You only have one 1st rounder every year.
All I asked you was who's an impact player in the last 3 years he's drafted?
Well, Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter.
Jordan Davis is an impact player. Okay.
Jordan Davis played a lot of snaps last year, Dan. Okay. You can't just get rid of the snaps because
Jordan Davis is an impact player. Okay. All right. Hey, this is great. I love it. And this is what you get on Birds 365 too. This is that right there, my friends, was one of the great. Look at Zander.
Well, no,
one of the best segments that we've ever done, my friend.
I'm pissed.
Why?
Because
what, you're trying to change me to think like you?
I'm not saying I want you to think like me, but I want you to at least contextualize and not act like the only things that matter are the things that you have a problem with. I can point out things that I like and acknowledge there are misses. Howie, this conversation started because I told you that Howie Roseman was never going to get fired. You have not swayed me off that stance one iota, not one bit. Oh. Howie Roseman ain't going anywhere. So settle in, everybody.
Whatever Big Sil says is in cement. It is truth, justice, and the Big Sil's way. Excellent job, Zander. You know what? Don't surrender. That was excellent. Dude, what are you talking about? That was one of the greatest segments I've ever done in the last 10 years.
Oh, I love it.
Phenomenal.
I love it.
Phenomenal, my friend. Right. You're defending your boy. You should defend your boy. Andre Dillard and Jalen Reagor live on. I'm kidding. Hey, Farzetta's going to join us at the bottom of the hour, too. Zander Krause and John McMullen do a great job. Birds 365 in the morning. Please hit the like button. Come on, honey. You're not mad at me, are you?
No, I'm not mad at you, Big Sills. I could give a shit. I enjoy the discussion because you are an Eagles pessimist. And in a way, we need it. Wait a minute.
Didn't you call me the ultimate professional antagonizer?
Yeah, you're like you picked the wrong career. You should have went WWE instead of football. That's what you should have done.
Thank you, Zander. I appreciate it. Catch you tomorrow, my good friend. That was absolutely sensational. Love that, man. See that right there? That's a segment. That's what I like. I like going back and forth and having conversation and dialogue. Hey, excellent stuff. Hit the like button. Mark Farzetta is going to join us at the bottom of the hour. Keep it here, National Football Show.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.